Tina Brown, welcome to THiNK 2013.
Thrilled to be here.
I think you're quite the person everyone looks forward to every now and then, particularly THiNK. Well, let's start with the fact that you've come back here at a time when you were somewhat lighter on the shoulders.
Yes, I'm in transition.
You're in transition, and more importantly, you're full of ideas. So tell us about what's on your mind.
Well, I left, I've been with the Daily Beast, which I founded for 5 years. I decided to leave and really develop the conference space that I got started at the Daily Beast. Particularly this event we do every year called Women in the World, where we bring together the most incredible, inspiring women from all over the world. It's turned out to be a great success. We have 2,500 people coming every year to Lincoln Center, and it's really become more than an event. It's really now become more of a kind of a movement and a brand.
Right.
So I'm now going to be developing out Women in the World into being more cities in the United States, internationally, and also digital. So it's exciting.
So when you went into it, clearly you weren't expecting the scale and the kind of reception it got, although you're a woman of ideas and America has seen that.
Incredible. We began with just 200 or 300 people, and right from the beginning it just took off. Immediately Hillary Clinton came, Christine Lagarde, all of these, Madeleine Albright, all these great people just kind of decided to put themselves behind it. Because I don't think that people talk about foreign affairs through the eyes of women. I talk about it often as the women who live behind the lines of the news. So that you're hearing and meeting women from Syria and Libya and Egypt and Pakistan and all these places that Americans, frankly, are so, perfunctory about. And when you hear the women tell their stories about what it's like to live there, and what these places feel like and taste like, people get very excited and they actually want to know more about the issue.
You're talking about very strong names, particularly women who've really made it up there. You're here in India. Last few months in India have been sort of, women's stories have been at crossroads. Last December we had the Delhi gang rape case. We've seen a Mumbai rape case, a gang rape case about a few months ago. Things haven't been good, and there's sort of a fight back mode that women are in India. How do you see this, particularly since Women of the World did a huge piece on women in India and emerging markets?
We did have one of our most important panels last year was about the India rape case. We had Barker Dutt, we had Shoma Chowdhury, of course, from Telly, and some incredible other people talking about that very thing. It's very galvanizing, and I actually am very excited by the fact that women in India do seem to be fighting back. And I think, of course, social media is empowering that fight back, so that now you can express yourself in a much more noisy way and actually embarrass governments, embarrass the judiciary, embarrass the community, in a sense, to take notice. The Mumbai rape also was extraordinarily painful to read about. What really upset me when I read that story was the fact that the young girl who was raped said, "Mummy, I am vanished," when the mother came to visit her in hospital.
Yeah.
It really struck my mind. It really hurt, the heart to hear that, because she felt like she had just been eradicated. And that's what's so painful about it, and why it's so important that we give voice to people with that kind of thing.
THiNK itself is sort of based on some form of long-form journalism, even as it is on very current and extremely urgent issues. Do you think that at one level we're seeing this whole, quick tweet sort of way of news, and on the other hand, we're seeing the extreme in-depth, suddenly the space for anything in the middle is vanishing, and that's probably the transition of media?
I think that's right. I think that there's more of a space for the narrative journalism in here than there is in the United States. People crave it, and yet there's very few people who want to support it. That's the problem, So really, it's only the New Yorker, Van Femme, my two other publications left, and maybe the Atlantic a bit. Most places are gone. There's no one to support it. And the fact is that long form still doesn't really adapt terribly well online. People don't really go to the internet in a sense. They'll quest for things that interest them, and then they will read it.
Right.
But they don't want to go to their news sites to get long-form journalism. And the iPad is a place that people read, but the numbers still aren't big enough. We had 400,000 iPad readers at Newsweek, which was very, very good. It was one of the very best. But in terms of the big scheme of things, compared to the fact that Newsweek did have 1.2 million, it's not very much.
The glamour around media in India is so significant that when a news corporation head, not the editorial head, but the commercial head once said that we're not in the business of selling news, but in the business of selling advertising, it was pretty widely accepted as a given, and that's their way of operation. That would be something that would need to change if India was to grasp news in a different way.
I feel that there is some more enlightenment, and I think it's up to journalists to try to find these more enlightened people and try to educate them, because the great news entrepreneurs have always been people who really believed in that. And the lack of them now in the United States. It's very interesting. In the United States now we're seeing the tech, billionaires coming into it. So we have Jeff Bezos, who's bought the Washington Post. Now he's saying that he's bought it because he cares about news and print and all these things, but we shall see what he does. Everybody's looking at him like a sort of pathetic puppies with their tongues hanging out, hoping that he'll figure it out, because no one has figured out the business model.
Right.
There is not a single news company in the United States that isn't suffering and hemorrhaging and feeling that they're just shrinking, and they want someone to figure out the business model that allows them to survive. So they're looking at Jeff Bezos. And then Hero Media, who started eBay, the auction house online, he's now starting a big news enterprise. And he's put his money behind Glenn Greenwald, the very, very
absolutely
journalist,
yes,
working with Edward Snowden affair.
Snowden affair, yeah.
And let's see what happens. But it's really encouraging that they're coming into the news space. Let's just hope that they don't, that they do support it rather than just simply inflict their own somewhat of naive politics upon it.
Two last personal questions. When you were sort of taking the call of saying, okay, I'm going to disconnect and do something of my own, was it hard? And also, was it hard for you to convince yourself that you would be a digital crusader rather than being one waiting for sort of media to settle you in?
Well, I actually felt really happy when I went to start the Daily Beast, because I felt that I was getting out of a dying culture and I was in a fresh one. And it was wonderful to have a news site that was so young and so hopeful. And so I loved it, actually. I love the Daily Beast. But it's very hard to make a successful business model out of it. We had a very successful editorial. We won prizes. We're 19 million unique visitors. And, we have a decent amount of revenue, but we never quite got into profit. And how it can get into profit is only really by slashing the cost to the point that a lot of the editorial goes by the board. So that, I didn't want to stick around for that. So, the question of how to make these things successful in terms of profits is the great question.
So which takes me to my last question. How do you define success for yourself?
Well, for myself, frankly, I'm at a point in my life where I really want to keep doing the fulfilling journalistic smart stuff. I cannot at this point in my life just do, editorial that's driven by advertising. I'd rather not do it.
Yeah.
I'm a writer as well as a writer, I don't have to. I actually at the moment get more satisfaction from doing the live conversations, because I regard it as something I call theatrical journalism. It's actually the deep conversations that you can't really do anymore, online, and you can do them live. So I'm all about juicy content. I'm all about narrative. I'm all about stories. And if it's easier to do that in the live space, then I'll do it in the live space, because I just want to spend my time doing that.
Thanks very much, Tina Brown. Thanks.